How's it going, everybody? Bryan, Alvarez, and Dave Meltzer here. Wrestling Observer Radio, August 28, 2018. Figure4online.com/wrestlingobserver.com. Beginning of a very busy week. Dave and I both heading out for the StarCast convention. All in.
God,
so much stuff going on.
God, I'm going to be such a villain this weekend.
Hey.
I can't even believe it.
Things happen.
I know, huh?
Embrace it.
Did you see the did you see the thing from Philadelphia the other night?
The thing from Philadelphia.
No, when they did the go home promo?
I did not.
Oh man, they booed me so bad.
Really?
Oh yeah, I was in the promo and I was actually a key part of the promo, yeah.
How about that?
Yeah. So it looks like it's going to be a big weekend.
Hell, that sounds like a lot of fun. Well, let's get into the
for
news
you, maybe,
here.
not for me.
Let's get into that. I'm sure I'll be a heel as well. Let's get into the...
What have you done?
I'm hanging out with you. That's what I've done.
I guess so.
Yeah. Guilty by association. That's how this usually works.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's weird.
Yeah?
Anyway, go ahead, yeah.
All right, we got to start with some bad news here today.
Oh, what a terrible day yesterday was.
Ed Cohen, Kid Yamamoto, Akira Taue, Aya Koyama, all either battling or have passed away from cancer.
God. Can you imagine? Wasn't it Wednesday that we just talked about, like, all these people passing away?
Yeah. I talked about it with Lance like a month ago when we were talking about how there weren't that many people, and then all of a sudden, as soon as we did that show, it's one after another, after another, after another.
Yeah. But I mean, just on Wednesday, Ed Cohen was probably one of my best friends in WWE for years. Did you know him by any chance?
I did not know Ed Cohen.
Okay. Yeah. I knew of Ed Cohen long before I met him, because in the 80s, like, he was, his position was somewhat similar to Zane Bresloff in WCW, although not exactly the same. I mean, Zane Bresloff was a guy with, like, they're completely different people, but they were both the guys who headed the, basically booked the arenas, and that was their event booking. That was their position. And Ed Cohen actually was the guy who brought Zane Bresloff into pro wrestling, because Zane Bresloff was a rock and roll promoter who did something that got him barred from promoting rock and roll. And so his other love was professional wrestling.
What in the world could that have been?
It's all kinds of stuff. I'm not exactly sure the details. I just know that he was a very high profile music promoter who got pretty much banned from doing it. So he went to Ed Cohen and just, I guess, started bugging him about promoting locally in Denver. He was from Denver. And then Chicago, because Chicago was like a city that he had a lot of connections in. And pretty soon he was doing pretty much the whole West Coast, or the whole Western, a lot of the Western part of the United States for WWE, other than the Bay Area, because we had a local guy from roller derby who was the David Lipschultz, who later Will McCoy, who did the Bay Area, but he did much of the West Coast shows. It was Bresloff. But anyway, Ed, in the 80s, when they were expanding, obviously it was a live event business, and he was the head of the live events, and he was, so all the deals when they were going into, the deals with arenas, trying to, this is a really, I don't want to say dirty, but dirty. Yeah. I mean, it was a really dirty business, the arena game, trying to keep people out, trying to get into places that were keeping you out because maybe some of the arenas had ties with local promoters. And he was really well respected in this, he was like a big star in the company. Like, if you knew the people in the company, everybody would, whenever the name Ed Cohen was brought up, it was like, this is a guy who's like in his position, who is like, everybody just basically acknowledged was great at what he does. And he was. And so I met him in 91. And, like I was given a tour of WWE, and, you meet all these people, and everybody was like, was nice and friendly and everything like that. But Ed Cohen was, I just remember when meeting him, he was a different level of friendly than other people that were there. And then years later, Vince, basically said, like, look, I want you to deal with Ed Cohen. That's the guy. You have any questions? You got any issues? You got anything? Ed Cohen, right? That's the guy I want you to, because to call, he's going to give you all the numbers and all that. So, it was like a business deal. And he and I became like personal friends, and he, Ed Cohen first had cancer when he was 17. And then I think he had it again when he was, as I remember, he had cancer when he was 17, 27, and 37. And I think that I went through it with him would have been probably in his 40s. I remember there was a period where, he was gone for months. Although we did talk a couple of times when he was gone, and they kind of ran the division, without him. And I remember when he came back, it was like he was like, I think he used the analogy. It's like Captain Kirk coming back to run the Enterprise or something. I'm pretty sure that's what he told me. I just remember it was like it was a Star Trek reference anyway, and being in the chair. So that would be Captain Kirk, right?
That would be.
Yeah. So it would have to be. So anyway, so he was there for a while, and things happened, and he ended up getting cancer again, among other things. And then he left the company and got married. I didn't hear from him a lot after he got married, but he just he was like the stuff that I remember. It's like the show, the famous show in Tacoma, right, with WCW and everything. Well, when the WCW thing went down, I remember him when they bought WCW. And if you remember, this is like they bought WCW as the XFL thing was just a disaster, right? So they just buy WCW, and Vince was talking to me at the time about like WCW and all the different plans for WCW and everything like that, which was weird because a lot of people don't, for whatever reason, they've gotten those stories so mixed up when I see people write about them. But the deal with WCW, I remember Ed was like, we have to make this one work because, we lost face with the stock, whatever, the stock price went down and everything like that. But with Wall Street because of the XFL debacle. And now we're taking on a company in our own business, and we can't fail in our own business with this WCW. And Vince basically gave him the plans and, gave me the plans of everything that they were going to do. WCW was getting Monday night. I mean, like, no matter what people, that was never going to happen. That was 100% going to happen. The angle with Torrie Wilson and Vince McMahon was supposed to lead to Linda McMahon walks in on Vince McMahon with Torrie Wilson. Vince McMahon has his pants down. It's supposed to lead to a fake divorce. Can you imagine booking a fake divorce in wrestling with the track record of people who've done that? And Vince was doing that at the time. But anyway, that was the deal. They were going to have a thing. And in the split, Linda was going to get Monday night, which she was going to give to Shane. And Shane would get Nitro on Monday nights and it would be a WCW show. And then the SmackDown show would be WWF. That was the plan. And the show in Tacoma happened on that Monday night where everything WCW related just got booed out of the building. And I remember the next day, I was talking to Ed the next day, and I go, Ed, he's changing. And okay, and part of the thing in this story is that in doing so, Ed had his marching orders. So he had to, this guy, okay, they book dates generally, I would say, it's hard to say exactly because everything varies and everything, but he was the guy who put together the schedule. But for the most part, I would say he booked about a year in advance, maybe 18 months in some arenas, maybe a little less than a year in some. But I don't remember exactly, but it was pretty much dates are like a year in advance. So he had to revamp the entire schedule because they were going to change dates for different things and add dates and all this. So he in very little time, he had to revamp the entire schedule. And so the Tuesday comes and I just go like, Vince is gonna drop this. He's going to do it. I just know Vince. And it's like, no way, he can't. And then the next morning, it was like, he dropped it. And Ed had to rearrange the entire schedule that he had just rearranged. And within like 2 weeks, he'd done it, which was an amazing feat to redo like a year's worth of bookings and, change cities and change dates. And, all these, you got to realize that like WWE isn't exactly like it in any of these arenas. They were a prime client to a degree, but in a big city, they're not like compared to the NBA franchise or, a major concert that draws really big or whatever. Although, in 2001 WWE, because of the success that they had, like that 98 to 2001 period was the most successful arena period in the history of the company. So they did have more power in the arena business at that point than they probably ever had at any other time. So that probably made it a little bit easier, but still, you still got to work around NHL and NBA that are far higher priorities and certain concerts that are going to be bigger priorities. And, you still want your big arenas for your Raws. And, I'm not sure the Mondays had to change so much, but a lot of the house show dates had changed. But I just remember that being like a complete nightmare. And, but you did it. And, I don't know. There's not that, it's like he was it's like, it's one of those things where like we're talking about a guy who a lot of people don't know, but when you talk to people who were in the company in the 90s, and the 80s, when they first made the big play, and the 80s were actually more important than the 90s in a lot of ways, because the 80s was the real fight, where you're going into new arenas outside the Northeast. And I could see from my own dealings with Ed, like why he was so good at what he did, because he was really, Jim Cornette, I said that he was like a really brilliant guy. And I never really thought of it as brilliant, but I guess he probably was, because like whenever we would talk, he was one of these guys who like you would talk business, but he was always about, your wife, your son, always about that. Always very personal, always talking personal stuff with me in some ways. I just remember he, I for whatever reason, I remember he sent me a book, because he was really, this is when he was single. He was like really a fan of Gabrielle. Do you know who Gabrielle Reese is? She's a volleyball player?
No.
You don't know Gabrielle. Gabrielle Reese was a pretty famous volleyball player back in that era. Very tall model. And I don't know her, but I'd met her a couple of times because I was really good friends with a volleyball player who played in the same league as her. So when they would come to Santa Cruz, they play in a beach league. When they would come to Santa Cruz, she would always take, this is Gabrielle Reese, blah, blah, blah. So, and Ed just thought like Gabrielle Reese was like the most, gorgeous woman. And I remember like, he sent me her what's it called? She did a book. I guess it was like her biography, autobiography or whatever. But, yeah, I just remember that. And I don't know what other things, but, just real, like always asking about my son, always talking about my wife. The cancer thing, when he went through it, was a real tough deal. And, we talked a lot about that because he'd been through it, again, I think at 17, because he was a real good athlete and had to overcome that, twice already. And then a third time in WWE and then again. And from what I understand, because I had not talked to him much since he got married, which was about 10 years ago, the only times I remember, he also like was a big reader. Like he would, as far as like if I, always talking to me about different stories that I did, always trying, a couple times trying to recruit me when the ratings would get bad, because I remember the week that when Raw, it's just funny. Okay. So Raw's ratings, remember in like 2001, it starts falling, right? It was really big until, around 2001. And then it starts going down. And he was like, so mad about the move to Spike, and I kept telling him it's not Spike, it's the product. And it's like when they went back to USA, I go like, it's not going up. It's going to be the same, and then it's going to start going down again. It's just what it is. But I remember the first week when they went below a 4, and he called me up and he just goes, you gotta come here. And I go, I'm not coming. And he goes, you gotta come here. And he's telling me like all these things to do and how to approach Vince. And I go, I'm not coming. But I remember he was like, yeah, I think it was around that time when like they were getting desperate on what they were going to do and everything. And it's just like, man, I don't know. I'm trying to think what other stuff that I can tell about Ed. Just that's a really, it's a really unheralded position. Everybody, whoever it was that you talked to in WWE, he was very frank. When things were good, fine. We always talked about who could draw and who wouldn't, which he got really mad at me once because, there were people who he said couldn't draw that I pretty much, or he was to him, to put it this way, to him, the guys who could draw, and he's there every day looking at numbers. He really was very limited on guys. Like if you go like the real guys who could draw, it was Steve Austin, The Rock, Hulk Hogan, Bruno Sammartino, of course, who was one of his idols. We talked about Bruno a lot. Like he was always, whenever I would see or talk to Bruno, he was always interested in how Bruno was doing because I think he grew up as a real big Bruno fan, and it was also like I remember when I saw Bruno in it was probably when the Bryan Hildebrand Memorial Show, and it's just like, so how did he look? And I go, he looked like Bruno, and it's just like. Still strong. And I go, yeah, still strong. Like it was real important. Bruno had to be strong. You know what I mean? That was like his idol. But those were the guys, like those guys were draws. And a lot of other guys who did not fall into this list, which is a huge, I think Macho Man would probably be another one, and Roddy Piper to a degree. But aside from that, it was like, yeah, these other guys think that they're, these big draws, and they're not, they're, I do the numbers. They're not difference makers. It was a very small number of difference makers. Cena would not. Cena was after this period when we were talking, but the period would include everybody else, and it was just, just very, very frank about what drew, who drew, and things like that. And then in the war, it was interesting because he brought Zayn into the business, and in 1994, Zayn switched sides to WCW. So he and Zayn were. They had respect. They had great respect for each other, but they were absolutely at war. They were at war with each other. I'm not on a personal level, and I think they still talk to a degree, but they were, just because of the sides they were on, they were definitely at war. But a very unheralded figure in the growth of WWF from a regional company to a national company. Heading what was the most important part of the business during that expansion period, because this was an arena business when they were fighting the Bill Wattses and the Jim Crockett's, and later the WCWs, and all of that. So that was that. And Aya Koyama passed away, who was a woman wrestler and fighter in Japan, who passed away from cancer at the age of 45. Kid Yamamoto, one of the biggest MMA stars in the history of Japan, like rock star, superstar. The first, the first small superstar that they had, Kid Yamamoto and Masato, the kickboxer, Masato Kobayashi, had that New Year's Eve fight that did like 30 plus million viewers on, it was the star fight of this was in the heyday of the New Year's Eve network stuff. And it was a kickboxing match, and Masato won, but Kid was like much smaller, knocked him down once. And Kid came from like this royal wrestling family. His father went to the Olympics. His two sisters were world champions. He was a great high school and college wrestler, did not make the Olympic team, and then went into fighting and had, it was like something like 17-1 and fighting guys much bigger than him. This guy's like, he was a natural bantamweight, maybe even a flyweight, really. He's like 5'4", had the like tiny waist, the big shoulders. Realistically bantamweight, because his walk around weight was 141. And today those guys cut to 125. He's fighting 155ers who are guys in that era who were cutting from 170. And he was beating them, until he started getting injuries. And then, he wasn't nearly as good. He came to UFC, very heralded when he came to UFC, but he was past his prime. I'm not, whatever the issues were that changed, he went from being unbeatable to just not having it anymore. And, a lot of different issues for sure. And, he just said, I guess it was yesterday, that, he's battling cancer. He's hospitalized right now. And Akira Taue, Akira Taue is, part of that great All Japan era, with Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Taue tag team, one of the greatest tag teams of all time. He had these guys had the best tag team matches there's ever been, with Misawa and Kobashi and Misawa and Akiyama. And, he was the president of Noah after Misawa died, which tells you how much respect he had from the guys. Although Noah did not do well. He was a big guy who had a name. He had a name from sumo. He wasn't a great sumo, but he was enough that he had a name. So he walked in, unlike most guys who walk in Japanese wrestling, you start at the bottom, you lose all your matches, and you start building yourself up, like the typical young Japanese wrestler. Taue came in, and because he was 6'5", and he had a name from sumo, he got a big push right away, and he was slotted very high. Kawada and Kobashi were actually slotted below him, and it took time, even though they were much better than he was, for them to kind of overcome his position, so to speak. But, during that period, the guy, he had great singles matches too. He won a Champion Carnival, he won a Triple Crown. He was, of the top guys, he was probably the least good wrestler of those top guys, but it's still, he's still a Hall of Fame ballot guy. It's crazy because Kid is legitimately, his American stuff wasn't good. That was after his prime, but Kid really is a Hall of Fame MMA fighter. Taue is a candidate, and Viano, who just passed away, is a strong candidate, for the Hall of Fame. Real strong. Strong enough that he may get in, but it's just been, anyway. And Braun Strowman turned heel.
Yeah, Braun Strowman's turned heel on Raw.
I didn't see that one coming because it made no because
well, you should have seen it coming then.
Yeah, well, what was funny, because before he turned, last night they were in Rochester, New York, and the main event was Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns for the championship. And I would have thought that, they were going to just boo Roman Reigns out of the building in this program with Braun Strowman, which I thought, it's whatever. That's how it's going to be. And they didn't. Braun Strowman was cheered more than Roman Reigns, but Roman Reigns was booed a little bit, but not nearly as much as I would have expected. From what and that's kind of like the thing that I had heard, is that he really wasn't booed that much. Now, he came out in Toronto, and they booed the hell out of him. But I got to give WWE credit on this one because of the way the turn went down. If they had done your classic turn before this crowd, they would have cheered Braun Strowman like crazy. And they did the not helping your partner is so much better for this turn than the classic just turning on your partner. If he turned on Roman Reigns in that tag match, they would have just gone nuts. But he just stood there while those other guys are beating him up, and he just stood there and did nothing. And it was a turn, but it wasn't a turn in the way you could cheer him. And then when he jumped in, it was like they didn't boo him, but they didn't really know how to react. And they didn't, but I thought for sure that they would boo him. And then, of course, they run out Rollins and Ambrose. And, he's joining with Ziggler and McIntyre to beat them down. So that's going to get heat, and then and everything. I mean, we'll see how it goes. Again, Strowman and Rollins to me were the two most popular guys on the Raw brand. So turning him is an interesting choice, and it's a risky choice because they just did the turn with Becky Lynch, and that hasn't exactly taken. Although Charlotte was not booed at the house shows this weekend either, although Becky Lynch was cheered like crazy at all the house shows, and I'm relatively certain that on TV tomorrow night they're going to cheer her like crazy unless she just goes to the judge. She's going to have to insult the fans really, really hard, and even if she does, they may ignore it. But yeah, so that's Braun went heel. So I think that, like, as far as the show went, because of that, it's a noteworthy show. Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman is going to be your top program. The 6-man Shield program is going to be with Braun Strowman, Ziggler, and McIntyre, which I didn't see coming at all. And so there you go.
Well, the show opened up with Roman coming out. Tremendous boos as usual. And he challenged Braun to come out right now for their confrontation. So Braun comes out, buries him for having his buddies, a Shield, come out and protect him last week. And they're going back and forth. And Roman finally says, let's get this over with. Cash in tonight. Let's do this match. And Braun Strowman says, I'm not cashing in tonight. And he actually got monstrous boos for that. So they started his turn early on. And he says, if I cash in tonight, the Shield's going to run in. So I'm going to cash in September 16th.
But that was a logical, his explanation was logical.
It was logical.
Yeah.
But he got himself booed mightily with that line.
Oh, as soon as he said that, I thought, oh my God, they're going to turn him. But then when he came with the next line, it's like, well, he's going to get, whenever you do something where it's like in the city and you don't do it because you're saving it for the pay-per-view, you're going to get booed. But to the rest of the country, the people who are not like actually in that building, that's not necessarily a heel move. So I just thought, oh yeah, it makes sense. You do it. So I guess they're in Hell in a Cell.
That's right.
If the deal is that those guys can't run in, the problem is that, we've established that means nothing. Even though they say it, it still means nothing.
So he says he's going to cash in the 16th Hell in a Cell. And Roman says, finally, you're starting to sound like a monster. He offers a handshake. Dolph and Drew come out. This was somewhat awkward. They come out and they basically challenge both of these guys to a match right now. They start heading down to the ring for the match. Baron Corbin interrupts. He says, I'm signing Hell in a Cell, and I'm going to sign a match Kurt Angle could never sign, a match none of you fans could possibly imagine. Drew and Dolph versus Strowman and Roman.
It was so weird. A match.
I was like, what?
What? That's the match we all expected.
They were about to do the match.
I know. It's like, I'm going to do them. Yeah, it was like nothing that you can imagine. Like every single person in the building expected it.
It was weird. So anyway, he said he had a third match to announce here tonight. Himself versus Finn Balor, the man, not the demon. He had a week to prepare. Finn had no time. So yes, he is the GM doing talking segments, and he's wrestling every week. The worst of all worlds.
Yes, your hope that he wasn't going to be wrestling.
Dude, was I ever wrong.
Not only that, but he, destroyed Finn Balor.
Hey, listen. I'm a professional. Maybe I'll go back on this next week. But I gave up on this goddamn match halfway through. When I saw my third chin lock in this match. The first one went on like a minute into the match. There were three of them. He's lurching around not doing a goddamn thing in the meantime. The fans are chanting, "You can't wrestle." I was like, dude, I'm done with this. He won.
It wasn't that bad.
That's impossible.
No, it wasn't that bad. It was. I was kind of bored early, but Finn Balor was actually really good late in the match, and I thought the match was, I wouldn't go so far as to say real good, but the match was fine.
Well, listen, as a viewer, I would have tuned out long before I got to Finn Balor looking good later in the match. What happened in this match?
Finn Balor looked really good, and he did a big dive. He missed the coup de grace. Baron Corbin had actually teased using a chair early, and then finally, after the missed coup de grace, hit him with a chair for the DQ. Then Baron Corbin said, "Oh, I forgot to mention the stipulation. It's a no DQ match." He comes in, another chair shot hits the end of days and pins him in 23 seconds. So it was like a DQ. Then they had a second match, and Corbin won it in pretty strong fashion, which is actually something that they did at the house show the night before, which for a house show, it was like, I guess, practice for this. But when I read the house show thing, it made no sense at the house show why you would do something like this. But it just made Balor look, the whole thing made Balor look so bad, I got to say. Like, I don't think it really got, I guess the idea is to get heat on Corbin.
We need more heat on Corbin.
Well,
he's got plenty of heat. I don't ever want to see him on my TV again. We need to give him more heat on top of that.
That's the wrong kind of heat. No, they want to give him the right kind of heat. But I didn't come out of it with the right kind of heat for Corbin either. I'm watching it just going like, God, they just destroyed Finn Balor, and it's Baron Corbin. It's still freaking Baron Corbin, who's, feels like, I guess like it's like he kind of has good heel characteristics in some ways, but it's like it's kind of like limited, because I feel like even if you don't like him in the right way, and he's doing the smug thing, and he's the heel general manager, which is an easy role to get heat in. It's like once the match starts, you just kind of lose interest in him unless it's kept short. It's not that he's bad. But
I disagree with that.
I think he's adequate, and sometimes even good. He's a good athlete, but I don't know what it is. It's look, he was working with Finn Balor, and I'm also so totally done with that program. I've seen enough Finn Balor and Baron Corbin matches that I can, watch them in my sleep, and I think maybe the next time I will pretend that I'm sleeping too. But
so you defended this match and then spent 5 minutes burying it?
No, it was all right. The match was okay. It's just I'm done with it. I don't want to see it. I mean, it's like it wasn't like it was bad. I mean, like again, like in the end, I was like, okay, this isn't bad at all. Finn Balor's running wild, and it's okay, but it's it's just not that exciting. And it's you come in with a situation that should get heat. It didn't have that much heat. I don't know. I'm tired of the feud. That's all. I could probably live without. I hope Baron Corbin is in a position where he doesn't have to do any more interviews or wrestle again. But I don't think we're gonna. I think we're gonna get more of both.
We had hype for the Undertaker Hunter match. They talked to Foley, Christian, Flair, Nash. Seems everybody's predicting the Undertaker.
Jeff Jarrett too.
Yep, Jeff Jarrett.
That
Shawn Michaels.
I guess that surprised me, but I guess Jeff Jarrett. Well, Jeff Jarrett's not on. Well, Jeff Jarrett's promoting a show, the NWA show on October 21st. So he is doing something on the other side. It's interesting because it's like this pay-per-view in the middle of the night, and they're promoting this match like much bigger, like it's a much bigger deal than anything on their real pay-per-view. Their next pay-per-view. I mean, they're promoting this because this is like a big WrestleMania main event where you bring in all the old timers and they all predict who's going to win. And almost everybody is predicting Undertaker. Does that mean Triple H is going to beat him? Austin predicted Triple H.
Did he really?
Yes, Austin predicted Triple H would win, and
I don't see the point of it. I mean, Les Hunter's going to have some huge match at WrestleMania or something like that, which I guess maybe.
He might.
Maybe. Shawn Michaels back next week. Maybe The Undertaker as well, although they did not announce The Undertaker, only Shawn Michaels.
So he's going to give his prediction, I guess. Which would probably
got to be there live for that one.
So that probably the situation, then Undertaker probably will, if he predicts Triple H, then Undertaker's probably going to confront him, I guess. Maybe.
All right, so then we had Apollo and Dana backstage. And she wants to win her match tonight, get onto the Evolution pay-per-view. Titus says, I got a match for you. Sasha Banks is your opponent. She leaves. Apollo says, dude, she's had one singles match in 9 months. Titus thinks she's ready to go. She's not ready to go. Faces Sasha. Sasha with the backstabber into the Banks statement for the win.
Pretty quick.
Nothing terrible. And then Titus and Sasha hugged afterwards. Or Titus and Dana.
Yeah.
Apollo was very upset about what had happened. Strange storyline they're doing here.
I have no idea where it's going to go.
Well, it appears that Apollo and Dana are going to get together. So they teased last week.
Right. And somehow that's a bit, but Titus needs to have people with him because Titus, how can you have Titus worldwide when it's only Titus?
Well, I mean, they don't have to leave if they get together.
Yeah, but isn't that like the tease that he got mad at Titus for booking her against Sasha?
Well, yeah, I could do that
when he wasn't ready.
Yeah.
So that feels like the beginning of major misunderstandings.
Then we had Jinder meeting with Dean Ambrose. Since when was Jinder a yogi, by the way? I know he has been, but what happened? Did I miss something on main event?
No. They just one day just gave him a new character. That's all.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense. So Dean's filled with anger. Jinder says, I can show you the way to peace. And Dean tells him to get out of his face. This leads to a match later. Seth comes out.
He was visualizing breaking his face and breaking his ribs. And that was pretty much it.
Then we had the big Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens match. Owens comes out before the match and says, I'm glad you're happy. You've got your title. Your buddies are back. You've got your CrossFit.
So the Rollins thing, it was an open challenge because he wanted to defend his title, but Ziggler and McIntyre, who he figured he was going to wrestle, are already in the main event, so he had no opponent. But he wanted to be a fighting champion, so he basically said, he'll defend against anyone. And then Kevin Owens' music played, and the place went crazy for Kevin Owens' music because they were in Canada, and, Kevin Owens is Canadian. And they cheered him like crazy until he made a point that he is not from Toronto. He's from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And then he talked French. And he actually turned the crowd by saying he was from Montreal and talking French.
He did. He said, your friends are back, my friends are gone. If Sami Zayn were here, I'd have won the Money in the Bank briefcase. I would have cashed in. I'd be the Universal Champion right now, but it's just didn't happen.
They cheered him when he said that.
It's been a terrible summer. It's going to end tonight. I'm not leaving this building without a title. So they have a match. They had a hell of a match.
Yeah, really good match. One of the better Raw matches in a long time.
We had our coach line of the night. He says, we're seeing the best Shield we've ever seen. They reunited last week and did one beatdown. He's convinced this is the best they've ever been. Owens worked over Rollins' shoulder. Rollins hit a sling blade, 3 straight topes. Hit a big frog splash.
No.
It was 2, and then he hit the third one after.
He did 2. He tried a third and got hit, and then he did the third. Then he did another one after that. Yeah.
Owens with a crossface. Seth escaped. He avoided the pop-up powerbomb super kick, went for the curb stomp, got hit with a stunner. Place went crazy for the stunner. They chanted holy shit when he kicked out of a stunner from Kevin Owens.
Yeah, it's when was the last time that move was used in WWE ring?
I feel like Owens used it at some point recently as well, but it did not get the reaction this did.
Yeah, Cena used it, remember, for a while?
Well, he did the stupid springboard one that sucked.
Yeah, but it was still a stunner. Yeah, and then he stopped doing it because
it sucked.
Yeah, it was, I guess.
It literally never looked good a single time that he did it. Not one time.
I will agree, it always looked awkward, but he also always got a pop when he did it.
Well, yeah.
But that's
John Cena's going to get a pop doing anything, so how about a move that looks good?
But Cena do lots of stuff that looked awkward. Look at his punches. They looked horrible.
Well, yeah, but you're not going to break your hip doing a punch. He's getting a little older. Not sure that springboard stunner is the best for his hips and back long term.
Well, he gave it up, so that may have been the reason.
Anyway, so Seth hit the buckle bomb, but Owens just no-sold it and super kicked him. Coach called it a counter, and Seth went up top. Owens crotched him. Owens hit a moonsault, or went for a moonsault and missed.
He missed it.
Seth hit the curb stomp for the pin. I like this match a lot.
By the way, Roman Reigns used the term curb stomp during his promo.
Oh, man.
And that term is banned.
It is banned.
You're supposed to say stomp, not curb stomp. So,
Kurt Angle did an Instagram message briefly, says he didn't know if his vacation was temporary or permanent. He hoped to be back soon. Braun met with Corbin, gave him the briefcase, said to bring it to Hell in a Cell. Then they come back to the ring. There's Kevin Owens. He's sitting in a chair. And everyone's chanting his name. He's sitting there for a while looking very sad. And then he puts the mic up to his mouth and just says, "I quit." He walks out of the ring. Then they advertised him for the upcoming show in Australia. A little awkward.
So he's in the tag. It's like Cena and Lashley against Kevin Owens and Elias.
The Drifter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess, well, that was awkward, yeah.
Renee with Drew and Dolph. They said tonight they'd finally make their way to the top of the food chain. They were right. Revival versus the B team. Heat on Bo for a while. Axel made the hot tag. Big comeback. Tried a reverse rolling cradle. Dash got the blind tag. Shatter Machine for the pin. They now beat them both in singles matches last week. Here in a tag match on this show. So probably next in line for the tag titles. Hit the ring afterwards. Gave Bo the Shatter Machine. Grabbed the mics. Said, "This Raw tag team division is a joke because of these two geeks. Sick of these morons making a mockery of the sacred history of tag team wrestling. We have proved we could take the titles anytime we want." They clank the belts together. They throw them down on the guy as they walk out. It actually was not a bad match. It wasn't a bad promo. But it's the B team. And it's impossible to take this seriously.
They're trying.
And by the way, that's like the storyline. It's impossible to take this seriously because it's the B team.
Yeah. They did the thing where they teased the exact finish that they did on the pay-per-view, and it didn't work this time, where the Revival, one of the things I guess that they're doing is they like name drop like the Midnight Express and the Road Warriors and Arn and Tully, and they talked about how the tag team division is not as good as it was then. And I tell you what, when you mention those names and then you talk about the B team, it is a pretty big drop.
It's rough.
Yeah, I thought technically the match was fine, but not much heat.
Then we had the announcement that SummerSlam will be in Toronto next year. SummerSlam, NXT TakeOver, Raw, and SmackDown the whole weekend.
Yeah, so they moved it up a week, which means that...
Just for your daughter's birthday.
No, it's worse, though. It's the weekend of the G1 Finals.
Oh.
So the Saturday... God, and there'll probably be a UFC show. So that Saturday, there's going to be, the early morning semifinals. There's going to be, if there's a UFC show, there's certainly going to be a takeover, and there's going to be the G1 finals most likely, unless they move the G1, which they probably won't. So, and then the next day is going to be SummerSlam. So that weekend is just going to be beyond insane. I don't know why they moved it up a week. The other thing that I don't know. But the other thing that was interesting, because it was pretty much strongly rumored that it was going to be Toronto, but the big question was would they put SummerSlam at the stadium rather than the arena? And it's the former Air Canada Centre, now called the Scotiabank Arena, I believe, Scotiabank Centre. So, they didn't take the risk of going to the big building. I mean, they'll sell it out. Although Raw didn't sell out Toronto, and I thought I was really surprised. I thought Raw in Toronto tonight would be like that's even though most Raws don't sell out, I thought this one, Toronto would be like a guarantee, and it wasn't. I mean, SummerSlam will guaranteed sell out Toronto immediately. I mean, that's not even anything to worry about. But so the TakeOver Saturday, they're going to do a fan fest and stuff that weekend too. So they're bringing that in, as well. So it's going to be more elaborate than Brooklyn. I'm surprised because, SummerSlam, they kind of made the tradition of Los Angeles, and then they moved it to New York. the Barclays Center, where it had been very successful the last few years. They didn't want to go back to Barclays because they're doing WrestleMania in New York. So I get that. So a lot of people assumed that they would be going to back to Los Angeles, but they picked Toronto for whatever reason. And, it's fine. It's a good market. You can't predict what's going to happen from a year from now, but I'm sure that they'll do well.
Drifter came out for his usual deal. He's running down Toronto, so out comes Trish Stratus, who gets a gigantic pop. She will not stand for him running down Toronto. So she pushes the Evolution pay-per-view, says she'll be lacing up her boots, stepping into the ring with Alexa Bliss. Elias says, I hope it'll be a swimsuit model pillow fight. And she says, I have a suggestion for you. Hit the bricks. He says, just like all the other women, clearly you want to walk with Elias, but I don't date women in their 60s. And she slaps him.
That was mean.
It was ridiculous.
That was really mean.
Ronda's music hits.
I thought Ronda was going to start judo throwing him all over the place.
I thought she was going to kill him.
Yeah, she didn't do a thing.
It was mean, but it was ridiculous, Dave. It was preposterous. Come on.
She's
not 60 years old. She doesn't look anything near 60 years old. Are you kidding me?
No, she doesn't. Now, you're going to get me in trouble again?
No, I'm not.
Okay, she doesn't look anywhere near 60. Now people can say that I'm insulting her age or something.
Ron and Natty head down to the ring. Leads to a match, Natty versus Alicia Fox. Alexa cuts a promo on Trish. Ronda and Natty before the match. Buries Trish, tells Ronda she may have beaten her. But Ronda didn't do what she wanted to do, which was break her arm. She's going to invoke her rematch clause at Hell in a Cell. And then calls out Mickie James, so it's 3-3. Short match. Heels try to interfere. Ron and Trish run him off. Natty puts a sharpshooter on for the submission. And then after the break, the babyfaces are backstage, and they run into...
Well, you missed the big thing was Natalya paying tribute to her father.
That's right.
At the finish, when she pointed up in the sky. I think that this was, among other things, it fit into the storyline and everything, but I think that they probably felt that they needed to give her a clean win, for feel good. And it's Toronto. She's very over in Toronto anyway, because of the Hart family and everything. And, it worked out fine.
So they go backstage and they run into, of all people, the Bellas. You can hear fans booing them out of the building. They announced that they're back in action next week on Raw. They're facing the Riot Squad.
So that means that they're baby faces.
Dude, who knows? They're on Raw. They're on SmackDown.
They worked the Raw house show.
They're booed like crazy every time they're shown on television.
Well, they didn't boo Brie against The Miz.
They didn't boo Brie with Daniel Bryan on SmackDown, but they booed both of these girls the last time we've seen them on Raw.
They booed them tonight, and they booed them on the pay-per-view. Yeah.
Corbin's on the phone. He says,
Stephanie, right?
Yep, I'll talk to Kevin Owens, see what's going on. I'll get it all straightened out. Wants his masseuse in there. Lashley shows up. He just can't believe this. Corbin signs him to a match. Lashley says, who's it against? Corbin says, I got so much going on. Kevin Owens quit. I got paperwork. I can't remember. Lashley gives him a big smile.
That's like, I don't know.
Smacks him on the shoulder, says, I'm proud of you for making all these matches. Smacks him on the shoulder again, and then glares at him. I like this Lashley.
I guess. They haven't done anything with him, though.
They're biding their time, I'm sure.
They don't know what to do with him. They put him against the Ascension in a handicap match.
He destroyed both of them, smashed them.
So in this match, they were trying to act like he was the underdog, and I bet you there's not one person in the building.
Nobody
thought that Bobby Lashley wasn't going to win this match. Everybody knew he was going to.
Now people are going to be mad at you for the narrative that nobody takes the Ascension seriously. Clearly, Dave, everybody thought that they were superior to Bobby Lashley in this tag team match. He was the underdog and he overcame the odds. Don't try to change the story, Dave.
That was the story they were trying to tell.
Yes.
Nobody bought that story.
Oh, come on.
Come on.
When they want to tell a story, the fans are required to buy it. And if they don't, it's our fault. You know this.
I will say this, as far as Toronto went and everything, that Toronto was no different throughout this entire show than any other city.
God, good thing Becky wasn't there.
Yeah, tomorrow they will. Yeah, but they're not going to be any different tomorrow either. It's Becky's going to get cheered, but Becky got cheered everywhere this weekend. And she's gotten cheered everywhere since the turn. So she's going to get cheered. Now, will they boo Charlotte tomorrow? I mean, we'll see. They may. We'll see. But we didn't have one. Vince didn't get upset once. We didn't have one. Corey Graves never used the term Bizarro World once in the entire show.
Man.
And I mean, they were probably sitting there waiting for that Bizarro World thing, and it didn't happen. Like, they didn't boo, I mean, they booed Roman, but Roman gets booed at every TV city, so.
We had the Dean Ambrose Jinder Mahal match. Dean has put on weight and gotten a tan. Short match, Jinder went for the Colossus.
He didn't have a tan.
He had more of a tan than he's had in years on this show.
I guess. He didn't look like he had much of a tan to me.
Dean slipped behind, dirty deeds, 1, 2, 3.
This was a nothing match.
Nothing.
Yeah, it was like it was like Dean should be really hot coming back, and I don't know if it was late in the show or
he's in the death spot facing Jinder Mahal.
Yeah, it may be an indictment of Jinder Mahal that like even Dean Ambrose will get no reaction because Jinder Mahal's in the ring. I tell you what, that Jinder Mahal big push last year, that sure paid off. That's what I was thinking, watching him doing this Shanti deal and not being over in the least, and then not getting any heat with Dean Ambrose. It's like, man, they pushed that guy so hard for so long, and then they gave up, and nobody cares about him again. He's like in the same position practically, only it's a little higher, but he might, just basically.
He's a little higher. I guess from when he was a total jobber who never won, although he has been a total jobber and never won.
Yeah. If he's higher than before they gave him the big push. Which, not
on a scale of 1 to 10, he's at a 2 right now. He used to be to 0, so you're right.
Yeah. He's about a 2.
Roman and Braun have a meeting. Braun says, "Listen, I don't like you. You don't like me. The only people who are getting smashed tonight, however, are Dolph and Drew. Then you've got 20 days to get ready to face me in the cell." So we got Roman and Braun versus Drew and Dolph.
Well, Roman said on the 21st day, you'll realize that you couldn't get the job done. I'll tell you what. Roman Reigns, the persona that he has right now, since he won the title, as far as in promos, I think it's pretty effective. I like when he's doing the back and forth, that kind of cool thing. I think it's all right. And usually, like, I'm not a big fan of his talking. I know he's got it in him. The scripting always, I don't think he's very good with the script. I know that he's got it in him because he's got a quick wit and everything, and he's got kind of a good attitude, but it's getting better.
So the main event?
Well, real quick, they announced the Bella Twins against the Riot Squad for next week, and a tag team title match with the B Team against the Revival, also for next week.
So the main event, Roman and Braun versus Drew and Dolph, and they get the heat on Roman the entire match. Fans are chanting for Strowman. He's on the apron screaming, "Tag in, we'll end this." McIntyre with a great overhead belly to belly. Finally, Braun is given the hot tag, and he just stands there. He doesn't get in the ring. The fans don't know what's going on. Ziggler and McIntyre just continue to beat on Roman. They get DQ'd. Braun then steps over the ropes, gets in the ring, screams at Roman, "I told you I'm not finished with you." Beats the hell out of him. Shield tries to hit the ring. Strowman, McIntyre, and Dolph work together. They destroy all three of them. Hits everybody with power bombs. And then Braun raises their hands as the show goes off the air. Another heel turn. Heat here on Monday Night Raw.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's a significant storyline change. And, did not see that one coming. Not sure it's the right move.
They spent a long ass time working really hard to get that guy over as a babyface.
I know.
And then they turned him.
And it was working. I mean, he was a really over babyface. Even though, if you look back, almost everything that he did all summer was heelish. If you actually look at it.
Well, of course. But it was always against other heels.
Yeah,
and he was pushed as the babyface.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, I wonder if the fans will go with it. I think that maybe with McIntyre and Ziggler, maybe to a degree, and certainly against the Shield, but in the singles match, it's going to be interesting. But I guess they had to do it. I guess in their minds, I thought they would just go with Roman and Strowman, and it'd be one of those things where that the crowd would just boo Roman, which they do anyway, and that would be fine. But I guess they weren't as fine with it as I figured they would be. They have to manipulate it, and we'll see. The crowds are interesting these days. They kind of sometimes do what they want to do, and then WWE certainly manipulates every situation and tries to, like this as a turn. It was really clever. That was the Don Morocco. I don't know if Patterson was there. Patterson was there at the show. I don't know if he had any influence on how they did this, but this was the Don Morocco turn on Pat Patterson in San Francisco, where it was the same thing. Where Patterson was so over that if he would have turned on him, it would have worked. But they, instead of turning on him, they just had him stand there, and the heels just beat up Patterson, and he wouldn't help him. And it was like, why aren't you helping him? He would just stand there. And that actually got more heat than him actually turning on him. And that was actually, Patterson Morocco had a hell of a feud up here coming off of that angle. So again, I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but that was the duplicate. That was the basically the exact thing that they did here.
So Saudi Arabia, what's going on?
Saudi Arabia thinks they got a show November 2nd, and all of a sudden they've, I've certainly heard that as the planned date. They've moved some shows that makes it look like they're going to go there. And it's going to be more, I don't know if it's going to be more controversial than before, but, Saudi Arabia is, there's been a lot of stuff that's gone on there since they went. But, other companies have done business. They're doing that women's pay-per-view like days. Literally, the Saudi Arabia date on paper is November 2nd if they do the show that day. The women's pay-per-view is October 28th. So you can kind of put one and one together. Not saying that's the only reason they did it. But as far as the date they did it, I think that you'd have to be very naive to believe that those dates are not coincidental because now they can go, well, we just gave them their own pay-per-view right before, this big show that, I don't know. They don't need the money. Saudi Arabia, the company looks so bad going there doing that propaganda stuff. I don't care if they do a show there or not. That's not the issue. The issue is just they go in there and tell you how great Saudi Arabia is. And, man, that's some bad stuff. That's some bad stuff. You couldn't really do it the first time, but then after the first time when they buried you, but what the hell? You'll take it because it's money, and all the basic crimes against decency and the way they've treated some of the women that have protested their situation there, and you're still going to go. And still going to go on there and tell us how progressive these people are and how wonderful it is and how beautiful it is. And it's just, it's a very hard moral thing to justify. But it's not a moral business, so I shouldn't expect any different.
Being the elite.
They did the go home. So Nick Jackson is, I guess he's in pretty rough shape as far as, this morning, but he did, Nick Jackson's the guy who edits this. So the fact that it's out tells me that he was editing it. And, I did hear from him, but I know he was rushed to the, he was really sick on the flight home from, I think Philadelphia. I know they worked Philadelphia Saturday, but I think that they may have done a meet and greet after Philadelphia, or maybe Philadelphia was the last one. I'm not sure. But, when they were flying home from the East Coast, he got really sick. And he went in and, went into the emergency room, I believe, or urgent care. I think urgent care is actually what he went into this morning. And hopefully he'll be okay because, they got their own show on Saturday night. This is a big week for them. So
What do you have, like the flu?
I don't know exactly. I think it's probably a really bad flu, but I don't know. I don't know if that's exactly what it is. I just know he wasn't feeling good at all on that flight home. I mean, really, really bad. I'll tell you. I can get you more kind of details on it. Hold on. Hold on. On his flight, he was shaking on his flight home, and he had a really high fever. He went to urgent care this morning. He was bedridden for a lot of the day, but I mean, he turned out the video of being the Elite. So I guess, I think they wanted it done earlier, but he got it done after Raw. So it was a 25-minute show, their go home show, and there was a bunch of stuff. Stephen Amell and Christopher Daniels had a face-to-face, which wasn't too bad. A fan bought Adam Page new boots, so he's got new boots that apparently don't. These boots aren't going to talk to him in his dreams. He was walking around doing autographs with no shoes on, and Rey Mysterio did a promo, which was really weird. He's talking to like a friend of his, and he said that like he's doing the show for free because he's friends with Cody. And then they kind of like, I don't know, it was a really weird promo. And it's not like they're going anywhere with it because, Ray's going to work this weekend and that's pretty much it. I mean, he's not going to, there's no angle for him to do anything after this. I mean, Ray didn't even work Triple Mania and that was Conan's show, this past weekend. So, but yeah, they're going to do that. And, trying to think, they still teased Flip, but nothing officially said. And Daniels and Kazarian and Scorpio Sky were running up the steps in Philadelphia. And at first they were, because Rocky is Frankie Kazarian's favorite movie. They at first didn't hate the city of Philadelphia, but they, in fact, by the end of the promo, they did hate the city of Philadelphia. And Marty Scurll was going through his whole life that they told him he could never be a pro wrestler. He's not good enough. He's too small. And he said that there's going to be no comedy in this match with Okada. This is a serious match. This is not the Marty Scurll that's out there having fun. He's there to prove that he can beat Okada, the best wrestler in the world. So that was kind of how they promoted that one. And they did another video. Cody and Nick Aldis did another video. The David Lagana stuff building up the NWA championship match has been really good. It's better than like any TV build up for a match. Like they've really, Nick Aldis, like as far as like just standing there and talking and holding the belt, he's really good. And Cody has gotten himself to where he's a real good promo. And they did make fun of him. I'm trying to remember what the deal was, but they were at like this autograph thing, and there was all these Stardust like things, these Stardust, WWE stuff, I guess, that he had at his table besides his Cody stuff and the Brandy stuff. So, but that was pretty much it. It wasn't like I'm trying to think. There was no great comedy. It was more a straight build, like a go home show. It was basically the go home show for All In. We're going to be doing, how many shows are we doing that weekend?
I only know the two.
Okay, we're not doing shows.
We'll probably be doing shows, but as far as like,
we're doing 2 shows in front of people, and then we're going to be doing so much content. It's ridiculous.
It will be a very busy weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got at least 1 documentary interview, if not 2, that weekend, and yeah, it's going to be a very busy weekend. A lot of stuff. AAW show on Friday night, maybe Thursday night too, depending on when I get in. I guess maybe not Thursday night. And they're streaming the AEW, I think, on High Spots. There's a Warrior Wrestling show on Sunday with a lot of big names. And that's just, yeah, it's pretty big deal, this show. It's I don't know what it's going to mean, because a lot really depends on the pay-per-view number and the television rating. And I got no idea how those are going to do. I mean, I think the pay-per-view will do fairly well. Television rating, I don't have a clue how that television rating is going to do. But if it does really well, that's they're going to be in demand. If the pay-per-view does well, they can make some money if the pay-per-view does well.
So the fight we did not talk about this weekend, Cody Sandhagen and Iuri Alcantara.
Oh my God, that fight was incredible. So Iuri Alcantara got Cody Sandhagen in an armbar, and his arm was like bent backwards, like Alexa Bliss. So I'm watching it, and it's just like, this is like crazy, right? And it's just like this guy, and Iuri Alcantara is just bending it, and he's not tapping. And I'm just thinking, like, this guy's like immune to arm bars, and he's like Alexa Bliss, he just must be double jointed or something, because this looked horrible. I mean, like, and then he gets out of it, and he just beats the hell out of Iuri Alcantara, to the point where there were at least 2 times in the first round where I'm screaming, even though it's on tape, because I'm not watching it live, I'm watching it on DVR. You got to stop the match. And they go in there, and he's just pounding on Iuri Alcantara till the end of the first round. It should have been stopped at least on 2 different occasions, maybe 3. Then they go in there in the second round, and Cody Sandhagen gets him down, and he's pounding him again, and it's like a minute late on the stoppage. Not quite a minute late, maybe 20 seconds late on the stoppage, but this was really bad. That said, that first round was one of the best rounds of the year, just that comeback and everything like that. So afterwards, Paul Felder goes like, "Oh my God, you must have incredible flexibility." He goes, "No, I have below average flexibility." He tore my my elbow popped, and I figured I'm just not going to lose this fight, and it's already popped, so the damage is already done, so I'm just not going to tap. That guy must have, like, can you imagine whatever it is? I think the combination of the aversion to pain and maybe bad judgment. Don Frye was like that, if you remember. Don Frye, remember, he wouldn't tap and got his arm broken by Yoshida?
Dude, it was all sorts of things. There was that double ankle lock that screwed up him and Ken Shamrock.
That was with Ken Shamrock. He wouldn't tap there either. Yeah. Don Frye's thing, yeah. I mean, Don Frye's thing is that he just, no matter what, he wouldn't tap. But in the long run, all those things worked against him because it ended up ruining his body by not tapping. And when I heard Cody Sandhagen just go, I'm just not going to tap, it's like, dude, it's really better to tap and lose the fight than have surgery. But he did get a win, and it was really it was an amazing performance. But man, I don't know, but yeah, that's what happened. It was incredible. It was an incredible first round, one of the best rounds of the year.
All right, a couple of mailbag questions here before we go. Any word on the UFC main event for Madison Square Garden? Is the Diaz fight going to headline?
There's supposed to be a main event. I have no idea what it could be. I know that they are hoping for John Jones. That would be very corrupt if USADA doesn't suspend John Jones for at least 2+ years. And I don't know what to say about all this, so that it hasn't been said. I mean, the idea that not only it's been a year and they haven't officially given a time on the suspension of John Jones, and California didn't give a time either. It's just like, if this was anybody else except for Conor, the guy would be suspended for 4 years. But worse is that John Jones has only been drug tested once this entire year. We're in almost September. I mean, when you have failed drug tests once, they're supposed to test you way more often. This guy's failed 3 times, and they're not testing him because they're afraid that they'll catch him, I guess. And it's just like, I mean, there's not even a justification for this. It's like, this is where, like before the John Jones situation, I could sit here and go, well, I understand what USADA's doing. I may not necessarily agree with it, with everything that they do, but they're doing the stuff that they got to do to clean up what was a very dirty sport, and it is a lot cleaner. Okay, I mean, that's the one thing, there's no perfect system, and I'm sure that there's guys beating the system because it's that way in all sports, but it's not that many, because I've seen too many guys with physical changes. I've seen too many guys with both physical changes and career changes, guys that were really good that all of a sudden stopped being good. And you can look at the timeline. It was almost immediate after they got this USADA in. So, I mean, there have been bad stuff from USADA, and there's been more good than bad, okay? But the John Jones thing has just been a total expose, and it's really sad because, that that should not be a consideration. Just because a guy's a really good fighter, that we're going to, allow him, we're not going to suspend him because he's a really good fighter, even though, how do you not? So anyway, and I don't even know who he would fight. I mean, I guess he could fight Gustafsson, which would be, that'd actually be a hell of a fight.
This person here says, a few months ago, it was reported in the Observer that Revolution Pro could no longer use WWE UK guys because they didn't want to stop using talent from New Japan. Any reason why Progress is allowed to continue using talent from both? For example, Zack Sabre Jr. winning Super Strong Style 16 and Will Ospreay at the most recent Progress show.
Yeah, but that New Japan doesn't have any. The deal with Revolution Pro is that they use all that they rely heavily on the Japanese guys, whereas Sabre and Ospreay are not exclusive New Japan guys. They're but they do have they both have contracts with New Japan, but they're not exclusive. They can do whatever indies they want. As far as Progress and WWE have a business deal. I mean, they're completely affiliated with each other. I mean, WWE's got, so I mean, they basically, WWE, I don't want to say they have control over them, but they kind of do. So, I mean, they don't make the decisions, but they can make decisions if they want to. They let them do what they want. But the whole thing is that, so it's a completely different thing. I mean, Revolution Pro was offered the same deal, but in that offer, they would have to drop their affiliation with New Japan. I mean, they could have used Ospreay and they could still use Sabre, but they couldn't use, they couldn't work as close with New Japan as they do.
This person here says, in regards to the Ernest Miller story that came from the Don Frye discussions with WWE and WCW, what is the story with Ernest Miller?
Do you remember the story?
I don't remember the story. I'm sure I remember if you tell me.
Yeah, every single time we had Don Frye on, we always had to have him give the story because it's such an entertaining story. I can't really do justice to it, but the short version is that Don Frye was brought in to negotiate with Eric Bischoff to go to WCW. He was already doing really well with New Japan. And when he was there, he was with Ernest Miller, and Ernest Miller is just going about how he could beat any of these guys in UFC.
That's right.
And he's doing it to Don Frye, and Don Frye's like, no, you can't. And he thinks like his point karate stuff that he's doing would like beat these real fighters. And Don Frye's trying to explain that stuff doesn't work in a real fight, the point karate. Oh, I'm a badass. I can blah, blah, blah. He just goes, these guys, they're going to like take you down and they're going to beat the shit out of you. That's what they would do. And he just thought I'm too fast. They could never do that. So I don't remember exactly how it goes, and they didn't get into a fight, but Don got mad enough that he completely blew his shot in WCW. So it got at least heated enough that he, I guess must have rubbed Eric the wrong way or whatever had happened. He never got signed by WWF or WCW. He just wrestled for New Japan, which was interesting because when he was in New Japan, like, he would lose, but he would never. The one thing he never wanted to do was submit because he just goes, "That's my gimmick, is I don't submit." So I don't know if at the end, I think he got double crossed on a finish, but I don't think he ever tapped once when he was in New Japan.
All right, everybody, on that note, we're going to wrap it up for today. There's lots of stuff up on the front page, back issues of The Observer, new Observers coming up on Wednesday, lots of shows. We'll have a million things coming up over the next week as we head into All-In Week. And that is it. So check out the front page for more, and we will talk to you again after a while.